It's Monday here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, joined today by Ray Fittipaldo, one of our great Steelers beat writers. We're going to go over more thoughts on what we saw on Friday night with the Steelers preseason opener and what we saw over the weekend as they returned to practice at training camp, starting off with the defense. We'll touch on the defense, O-line, and the quarterback situation, all here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive Podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive Podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Ray Fittipaldo, and as always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all the Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive Podcast, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our Pittsburgh sports writers. And as always, this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you're going to the North Shore, there's no better place to check out than Mike's Beer Bar. They have over 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap all day, every day. And when you're checking them out, they're always switching new ones in and out to get a new experience every single time. It's an amazing place to be, but we'll have more on them later. Ray, now that we've had the time to kind of step back, take in what happened with the preseason game, there was a lot of hype around different things. I think we've all kind of seen a chance for Steelers fans to kind of say, okay, that there were certain overreactions, as there always are. This time last year, everyone was wondering, is the offense about to be number one in the league? This time around, they're saying, what's happening on both sides of the ball? But one thing that I think we saw really got a chance is for a lot of the younger players on defense to get a shot in the preseason game and getting a shot even Sunday after the preseason game when they returned to training camp practice. We know TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Patrick Queen, Minkah Fitzpatrick, none of them played. Cam Hayward, none of them played in the preseason game. And then even a guy like Dante Jackson only played 2 snaps in the game. So we got to see a lot of guys step up, and you did your skinny post, which is available at post-gazette.com on some of those young defenders, especially Payton Wilson, and how they looked. What was your assessment of how he performed specifically?
Yeah, I mean, as advertised, Chris, that guy can run. He's got a nose for the ball. And I think most impressively, at least at first glance, it didn't seem like he was caught out of position. It seemed like he knew where to be at all times. Now, sometimes he was just trailing in coverage a bit and, made some tackles downfield, but the coaches are excited about him. You mentioned it. He got some first-team reps in practice on Sunday. I think that's probably more likely to do with resting a Landon Roberts, but it's always beneficial to get your rookies in there with the starters, during practices and these preseason games, because you want to find out about them, right? I mean, this is a great opportunity for them to get their feet wet in the NFL. So I think he's been impressive throughout the summer, and I was not disappointed in his performance against the Texans either.
And sure, he could work on things. I thought in coverage, he kind of, he got beat a few times where you'd hope that he'd do a little bit better. But again, rookie, first time playing, it was right off the bat. When the Texans tried to run the ball, Nick Herbig did a good job turning the run back inside, and who was there cleaning it up other than Payton Wilson certainly looked active in processing and attacking the run game there, which the Steelers absolutely love to see. Let's talk about some other young guys, though. One guy who seemed to get some more play on Sunday at training camp was Cory Trice, who he was in the game for a little bit. He was only targeted one time, led to a tackle for loss on his part, and then he looked like he was running with the runs on Sunday. What's been your assessment of Trice and where he stands in the cornerback battle?
Yeah, he's not a rookie, but he's like one, really, when you think about it. And, he missed almost all of training camp last year and the entire season because of that ACL injury. Let's face it, Chris, they don't have right now, they don't have a top backup at outside corner. And it's going to have to be Trice or any number of one of these other guys who they're looking at in camp. I think Trice is the perfect guy for them. He's what they want in a corner. He's 6'3", 205, fits the same mold as Joey Porter. So, he's coming back from that knee injury. Just last week he started to get in there more. I think they were easing him back into it the first week or two of training camp. But, if he could solidify that role, if he could just be a really good backup and maybe playing some sub packages, I'll feel a lot better about the Steelers defense. I don't know about you. I haven't been overly impressed with Anthony Averett or any of the other outside corners during camp. And, we're just starting now to get our first long look at Trice, and hopefully Trice can nail that spot down.
No, I'm right with you. I think Anthony Averett has kind of just been a meth veteran that you can keep around and maybe use at this position. I was honestly kind of looking at if Trice or Rush didn't step up, that was going to be more of what Cam Sutton would do after 8 weeks of being suspended later in the season. But if Trice can step up and be that guy, injuries happen, and there's going to be a time when someone goes down at every position at some point. And if Trice becomes the guy who can be the first guy off the bench, it'd be really interesting to see the cornerback tandem of him and Joey Porter Jr. if Dante Jackson were to go down like he did in this game, and all of a sudden, maybe the future of your cornerback room is sitting right there in front of you, and both of them can play well. So I thought it's good that we've seen that. Now we're probably going to see a much larger sample size of Cory Trice this week as they take on the Bills. But let's talk about other young defenders, and maybe not necessarily just rookies, but I thought another person that looked really good in limited snaps was Keanu Benton, and I know he kind of got pulled from the game for an eye injury. He got poked in the eye, but man, in the snaps early on, he was pressuring CJ Stroud. He was getting after it. He looked every much the bit of the player they were hoping that he would get better from training camp this year.
Yeah, we only had the Texans starters against the Steelers starters for a very short period of time. And you mentioned that guys like Watt and Hayward weren't out there, so take that with a grain of salt. But if you remember what the Texans did to the Steelers last season during the regular season, the way they ran the ball on them, I thought it was very nice to see that guys like Benton and the rest of the D linemen were getting after the Texans in the running game. Now Stride hit a couple of passes later, made some big plays, and the Texans were able to kind of run away with that game early. But I thought the run defense was good. That's what Benton is here for. I know we want to see more out of the pass rush from him this year, and I think that's coming. But if he could just be a really good run defender for them, we've seen Montravius Adams step up in camp. We've seen Leal step up a little bit in camp here. So that big concern about the defensive line, the reserves at least, that might be going away here as we, get into the third, fourth week of camp here. So I've been pleasantly surprised by that depth on the defensive line, and we'll see if they can keep that going.
Last thing on the young defensive moves here, there looks like there might be a new slot cornerback competition going on. We had given up talking about this as much because Beanie Bishop looked like he was going to be the guy, but Ray, on Sunday, someone else got a chance to run with the first team. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, Graylin Arnold was in there with the starters. He's got obviously more experience than Beanie Bishop. He's bounced around a little bit, so he has that going for him. He's also coming off an injury, and the Steelers, like with Trice, they were kind of easing him into camp here the first couple of weeks. And I kind of thought it would play out this way the entire time, Chris. You take a long look at Beanie Bishop. He did really well, but, you're not necessarily going to hand that over to an undrafted rookie without some stiff competition. So now it's Graylin Arnold's turn. We'll see what he can do this week. And, Mike Tomlin said yesterday, this week is very important for him in terms of his evaluation. He's going to have all this week to go with the starters, including likely that preseason game against the Bills. And if he does well, then I think the competition is on at slot corner. So it's probably going to be Bishop or Arnold unless they pick up somebody from the waiver wire. I think Bishop's done well, but now it's Arnold's turn to see if he can impress.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the offensive line next because there was also a lot of things that happened there over the weekend. I did a film study on it. I want to talk with Ray about what I found there, and we can go back and forth about our observations. We'll do all that here next on the North Shore Drive podcast and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo, don't go anywhere. But first, I want to remind you the show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar, it's on the North Shore. It's on Federal Street, right across the street from PNC Park. It's an amazing place. They have outdoor seating, so you can enjoy the outdoor summer vibes of Pittsburgh with with a view of the Roberto Clemente Bridge and the Pittsburgh skyline, while also having a great situation inside with over 20 televisions and a huge bar that has over 80 taps. They have over 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those beers are available on tap from the local Pittsburgh area. And when you're in there, they're always switching new ones in and out. So whatever you want, whether you want a summer beer, whether you want a porter, whether you want an IPA, whether you want a Hefeweizen, they have all the different options there. Plus, they have amazing food like steak on a stone, where you get your choice cut of steak brought to you on a heated stone. Every time you cut off a piece of the steak, press it into the stone, and you choose how well done you want every single bite. It's Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in Pittsburgh. When you go there today, tell them Chris sent you. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter here with Ray Fittipaldo. If you wanted to read Ray's piece again on the skinny post on the young defenders, including Payton Wilson, you go to post-gazette.com, just like you can go to post-gazette.com to look at my latest Steelers film study, which focused on the offensive linemen and specifically Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier. Now, Ray, let's start out with Fautanu here. Mike Tomlin confirming that he is going to be out this week. Our partner, Jerry Dulac, said that he was going to be out at least 2 weeks for the Steelers after he suffered a knee sprain injury. So nothing major there. The Steelers dodge a bullet from, there's a lot of concerns when it was kind of reported after the game when no one knew about it in the injury. And then Troy Fautanu comes up on the injury report. But still, the fact that he's going to be back at all, shows that he'll be back soon. That's a good thing. I looked at Troy Fautanu's game, and there were two notable plays that I think most people realized, like, oh, that didn't look good. And those are the two times Justin Fields got sacked. Both times he let a veteran guy get by him. And I went into the film room to kind of study what happened on those, Ray. On the first one, he went up against Danielle Hunter, who's, by the way, one of the best pass rushers in football. He's been a Pro Bowler for the last 5 years. And he just looked like Fautanu just had a little misstep in his drop back. When he was stopping back, he kind of stopped his progression of going backwards, kind of kicked back inside, and that's what allowed Danielle Hunter to just get deeper than him and get past his pads and allow him to get to the quarterback easily. Then against Jerry Hughes a few minutes later, he tried to get out a little bit further, and Hughes cut inside of him and over the front of his shoulder, and that allowed him to get a clear path to Justin Fields there. But looking at those, I don't think that those were super alarming plays. They're just things that, rookies in first starts, things like that happen. They're very clean up. They're things that get cleaned up by Pat Meyer in practice. What was your assessment of what you saw to Troy Fautanu? Because I also thought he looked good in the run game when they started to run the ball with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret. They really like Fautanu, and they're not going to let those two sacks cloud their judgment at all. So whenever he does get back, it's going to be interesting, Chris, to see how they approach it, because last week he was running with the ones. And as you know, they don't just give away those reps, for anything. So he was on a track, I think, to be this team's starting right tackle, and likely before the season started. So this kind of throws a wrench into things. It's unfortunate for Fautanu and for the Steelers. But I'm like you. The two sacks. The one thing when talking about the Hunter sack, the one thing when he does get that step on you as an offensive tackle, I don't know how Meyer teaches it, but most of the time when he gets that edge on you, you're just taught to run him, get your hands on him, and push him past the pocket. And he didn't do that. He just kind of let him rush around him. So it kind of looked like it was a lazy rep. I don't think it was a lazy rep. It's probably more so that he just kind of misjudged the speed and the athleticism of Hunter. And then the other one, you never want to get beat to the inside. That's the fastest way to the quarterback. And, he lets Hughes do that. So, not a great start for Fautanu, but as I mentioned, the Steelers aren't going to let those couple of plays, factor into their short or long-term decision-making. He's a really good player, and he's going to be in this lineup sooner rather than later.
I agree. Let's flip over to Zach Frazier, because I think actually Zach Frazier, he looked the best of the young offensive linemen, in my opinion. When I looked back at his tape, he didn't give up a single pressure up the middle, which is really important because the Steelers have been getting pressure up the middle when Mason Cole was center for the past few years. But he also didn't bobble a snap. Nate Herbig had 2 bad snaps with Justin Fields, and he looked very active in the run game, was double teaming well with Spencer Anderson, who I also thought had a pretty good preseason showing. And he was getting to the second level a lot. Zach Frazier was, as far as getting to the linebackers, walling them off, participating in the run game. What was your assessment of Zach Frazier's first action, especially because he ran with the ones more on Sunday, indicating maybe he's ready for his move up to take the spot from Nate Herbig?
Yeah, Mike Tomlin foreshadowed that last week when he spoke to us one day, that Frazier's going to start getting his reps, because we were asking him about Fautanu running with the ones, and Mike said that's going to happen for Zach soon, and then we saw that on Sunday. So overall, I thought it was good. And then you mentioned it, but the quarterback center exchanges really rankled Tomlin after the game. Those were between Nate Herbig and Justin Fields, and Frazier didn't have any of those. I took a look at him, just off the replays. It looked like the ball hit Fields in the hands on both occasions. It didn't look like it was anything that was Herbig's fault. So I don't want to necessarily say that Herbig is on the hot seat now, but I think, like Fautanu, Chris, all along we knew Zach Frazier was going to be this team's starting center. It was simply a matter of when, and if Frazier can go out there this week, take advantage of those reps with the ones, much in the same way Fautanu did last week, then we could be talking about something here a week or two from now about a true competition at center and at right tackle.
I agree. This could be kind of what the Steelers want to see, right? You draft these guys in the first, second round. You'll want to use them. You don't want them to be sitting on the bench all year long. And I think Steelers fans have been kind of antsy about that as well. But yeah, I think that Zach Frazier, this was kind of the plan all along. But I think a performance like Friday's that he had was more encouragement. They're like, hey, he's ready to step into this role. I think I'd like to see him more in the run game, being active. One thing, we saw Zach Frazier, he's a 4-time state wrestling champ, from when he was wrestling days. He loves to use his leverage. And there were times we saw a little bit of that, but with the way the Texans run their defense, they have an even man front. It wasn't like someone was always over top of him where he could showcase that. So a lot of times he was getting the free reign to kind of climb to the second level, get to the linebackers. I think what we're really telling is if they face off against a team that puts a defensive tackle right over A gap, right in his face, and how well does he do with that there? Does he still snap the ball well? Does he get that person off the ball? Does he seal them to the proper side when they're running up the middle? Those type of things could go a long way for Zach Frazier's progression. So I thought there was that too. Let's talk about some of the other young offensive linemen. Spencer Anderson flipped from left guard to right guard, showed his versatility, replacing Isaac Seumalo to start, and then eventually replacing James Daniels when Mason McCormick went in. What did you see out of Anderson's versatility, and does he look like he could be a guy that could be very useful this year coming off the bench?
Yeah, I mean, the versatility with Spencer Anderson didn't go away. Just because he's been playing guard this summer doesn't mean that he can't play tackle in a pinch in a game. And he might have to. If he's on your 46-man game day roster, it's likely you're not going to dress 2 tackles. So they like Anderson, and they like Mason McCormick. I think a lot. We talked a lot about early in camp Mason McCormick being the long-term replacement for James Daniels, but what about Spencer Anderson for Isaac Seumalo in a couple of years? Seumalo has 2 years left on his contract. He's getting older. I doubt they re-sign him, but maybe Spencer Anderson is that guy. At that point, Anderson will be entering his 4th season, but I like what I've seen so far from him. He was a guy last year, played mostly tackle in camp. This year he's playing mostly guard, and I think he's done pretty darn well.
I agree there. Mason McCormick, another guy we were talking about. I thought he got to exert some of that physicality we were looking for. He's another guy. He could still polish his game quite a bit. But like you said, if Mason McCormick and Spencer Anderson are the guards of the Steelers' future, you might have been seeing the future offensive line of the Steelers like late in the first quarter, early in the second, when Zach Frazier was center, Spencer Anderson was right guard, Mason McCormick was left guard, Troy Fautanu was right tackle, and Broderick Jones was left tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in the short term, the Steelers, once again, were really fortunate not to have a lot of injuries on the offensive line last season. So you need guys like Anderson and McCormick to
Yeah.
be ready. I know they're young, but you need those guys to be ready. We saw it. I don't know. I want to say a few years ago. It was more than a few years ago, but remember when Chris Hubbard had to come in and play a lot, and that guy earned himself like a really nice contract with the Bears. He didn't have any experience, but the Steelers trusted him, and he went out there and performed really well, whether it was at center, guard, or tackle. So, this is the time for Spencer Anderson to show off that versatility. This is the time for Mason McCormick to say, hey, I'm ready if you need me. So, that was nice to see, and I think those guys are certainly, as Mike Tomlin said, the arrow is pointed up for both of them.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the quarterback situation because while we're talking about all these young players, quarterback is still something to keep an eye on there. We'll do so in a minute here next on the North Shore Drive podcast. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. They're your mesothelioma and asbestos lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them today for a free consultation. That's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. And the show is also brought to you by Moon Township Honda. Moon Township Honda, located at 5802 University Boulevard in Moon Township, PA. You can also find them online at moonhonda.com. Here's a message from our friends at Moon Township Honda.
To build the Honda CR-V Hybrid, we took everything you love about the CR-V and kicked it up a notch with greater power. For a CR-V unlike any before. Adventure confidently with Honda, car and driver's most awarded brand in 10 Best history. The CR-V and CR-V Hybrid, part of the Honda line of rugged vehicles. Visit your local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily. Buy online or reserve from select Honda dealers.
We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter here with Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, Russell Wilson is supposed to start this week. That's at least what Mike Tomlin said after the Friday game. But on Sunday, it didn't look too much different in practice. Russell Wilson kind of sharing reps with Justin Fields. Is this weird to you at all, Ray, that we've seen this much Fields after? I got the first week and even the second week. But after, like, when we hit the third week, when it was time to get ready for the first preseason game, I thought for sure, like, all right, here comes Russell Wilson. He's ready to assert himself. And I get that he's a veteran, a 9-time Pro Bowl and a Super Bowl champion. But if this offense is going to run through him as the quarterback, managing games and balancing the run game, I think it'd be important for them to run it with him at least a little bit here in training camp.
Yeah, I mean, you want him working with your starters as much as he can. Chemistry with receivers, with running backs, cadence with the offensive linemen. You don't want any false starts when you actually do make that switch whenever it happens. So, we're in week 3 now. I mean, it's starting to get, you're starting to question what's really going on here. Now, it could be that you're just easing him into it, but I thought after Mike Tomlin said that, I thought Russ would get the most of the reps with the ones on Sunday. He didn't do that. There's only a practice on Monday. They're off on Tuesday. Wednesday's going to be light because you got the joint practice with the Bills on Thursday. So there aren't that many days for him to get those reps. So, again, all the reports we're hearing is that it's not a serious injury, but we're into week 3 now, Chris. I mean, we're talking about 20, 21, 22 days here that he's had this injury, and apparently he's not ready to be, cut loose just yet.
And I think that's a problem, and maybe not a huge problem for the Steelers if they're that confident in Justin Fields. Because I actually thought Justin Fields, when I look back at it, and I know that he didn't lead a touchdown drive, but I thought Justin Fields looked just fine. He was on time with his throws. The only incomplete pass that he threw was the one that Van Jefferson really caught on the sidelines, and the 2 sacks were just quick pressures that a rookie offensive lineman gave up off the right side against Fields. So. I really didn't have any bad marks outside of the snaps. I have a hard time judging snapping. Is like, look, as a person who used to play center in high school, the rule that what my coach always said was, look, if the center exchange from the quarterback is bad, it's on both of you. And so that's kind of how I feel about that. But at the same time, when it comes to making decisions as a quarterback, I thought Fields looked fine. And to me, I think he showed more and more he's more composed as a quarterback at least through training camp. He doesn't look like the erratic guy that we saw in mini camp and in OTAs and even in the first 2 days of training camp. And to me, that kind of puts a little bit of pressure on Russell Wilson to be like, hey, Russ, you need to actually show that you're still Russell Wilson that the Steelers went and signed, who is expected to come in, have a really good touchdown to interception ratio, and be that veteran leader that sets everything straight.
Yeah, I mean, Russ has looked good in practice when he has had the opportunity to throw, but you would think that would be his big edge over Fields. But right now, Fields is kind of matching him throw for throw in practice. Those throws over the middle, where there's a lot of timing between the receiver and the QB, those have been really good for Fields. So I know it's different. I know games certainly count more than practices, and regular season games obviously count more than preseason games, and that's ultimately where Fields is going to be judged. But right now, we only have mostly practices to judge him by. And Chris, he's looked pretty darn good since an uneven first week of camp. So I think you mentioned it. Yeah, I mean, obviously you want Russ to be in there to be healthy, but I don't know that the Steelers would be, having nightmares at night with Justin Fields as the quarterback. I think he's proven that he can be that guy for them.
I think so. I think that again, to me, it's not like Justin Fields has been amazing, but he hasn't been like the problems that were supposed to come with Justin Fields don't appear to be there right now. And again, he still has a long way to go to be the finished product of a quarterback that you want for a franchise guy. This is not me saying that he's there, but I've kind of maintained this whenever I've talked about this quarterback situation. I don't think that Justin Fields has overtaken Russell Wilson, but I do think that he is I do think that he has closed the gap between them. What we thought was Russell Wilson's clear lead is probably a little bit more of a marginal lead that I think Russell Wilson needs to show. So, we're recording this very early Monday morning. We're both about to drive to training camp, and we'll see. Maybe Russell Wilson does take more reps with the ones after this show, and we'll report that at post-gazette.com and keep you up to date with that. But I think they need to see it soon because they got this practice on Monday. They're off on Tuesday. They have their final Latrobe practice Wednesday. Their inner team practice with the Bills on Thursday, and then they play the Bills on Saturday. So if Russell Wilson is going to take over the first team, I think he should do it soon.
Yeah, and one more thing, the quarterback center exchanges, we're seeing how important they are after they kind of went away for a few years with Matt Canada, right? I mean, how often were they in shotgun last year? You didn't even think about quarterback center exchanges, but now with Arthur Smith running his offense, it's obviously something that's very elementary at every level of football, but the Steelers better get used to doing it with Arthur Smith because the quarterback, I don't care who it is going to be under center a lot more this season than he was the last couple of seasons.
Absolutely. We'll keep you up to date with all of these battles and how they're going with the rest of training camp and as preseason continues at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Ray, thanks so much for joining us here on the North Shore Drive podcast. And thank you all for joining us here on the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Read all of our work at post-gazette.com, including Ray's Skinny Post column, where he goes over what he saw from the young Steelers defenders, and my film study, where I go over Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier and how they looked in their first game. All of that and this show and so much more at post-gazette.com. We'll see you here again Wednesday on the North Shore Drive podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.